What is going on YouTube? Gabmus here and welcome to the 45th episode of the Tech Pills live stream. So let's start right off with the first news of today. System76 has a new desktop environment based on GNOME 3.38 and it's called Cosmic. And let's see what it's all about. So System76 has already been doing their own thing as far as the desktop environment goes. It all started with just a simple theme on top of GNOME shell on top of Ubuntu, and since then, of course, it evolved quite a bit, and the latest version of Pop OS 21.04 ships with this new desktop environment called Cosmic. Cosmic is based around GNOME 3.38 and it's basically a patch set on top of it. It's in a sense it's a fork of GNOME 3.38. What they've done with this is they've integrated most of the things that they were previously doing with extensions that they were developing in-house inside of this new fork. Much of what's new in Cosmic is in fact already been tested and tried in their Pop OS shell extension that I have actually been using prior to 3.38. It's quite nice. It has some nice features. Particularly one of the most interesting ones is a good tiling system for GNOME. And let's actually look at some mock-ups of what it's going to look like, and to some extent what it already looks like. So this is the first big change with the Cosmic desktop. As you see, this menu, if you've tried Pop Shell or Pop OS Shell in the past, you most likely already know most of what's going to be inside of Cosmic. This new menu here will replace the super menu. So the overview menu in GNOME Shell is replaced by this small pop-up menu right here. It allows for easy window switching as well as the usual set of actions that you could do in the GNOME overview. So launching new applications as well as doing some things like unit conversions and having some simple calculator directly from the search bar. This looks very familiar, kind of similar to Rofi. If you know like the Rofi launcher, it's a very popular one used typically in window managers, and it looks very similar. And as far as functionality goes, it's pretty similar to the GNOME overview. So I don't think it's too big of a change. I just think that they like this way better, and they're also combining it with the window switcher. So your typical Alt-Tab will be to some extent replaced by this menu as well. As far as I know, Alt-Tab still works as you would expect it to. So this doesn't really replace it. It's just that the functionality is present already in this menu, which is quite interesting. Some other very interesting thing is that we now have a dock. And according to System76, they actually looked like at the way people were using Pop OS and GNOME in general, and they noticed that many people actually have some form of either a dock or a panel. So they decided to include that in the desktop environment in Cosmic. And this is the menu, the settings menu that allows you to customize how the dock behaves. And as you see, it's integrated inside the GNOME Control Center, which is quite nice. And of course, it allows for the usual set of configuration options you would expect from a dock, like auto hide, panel mode, position, and icon size. Speaking of the dock, some of like two very interesting things that you can see here, these two icons over here, right next to the applications icon that is, to my taste at least, it's too colorful. I don't think this is final. Anyway, these two icons, like the first two ones on the left, are kind of interesting. The first one activates this menu over here, so the super menu we already discussed about, and the second icon activates the expose. So the more traditional GNOME overview. This is actually quite an interesting change, and it's taking a very similar approach to macOS, which is, again, it's interesting. It's a new thing, and as far as I know, it's not too common to see on desktop environments that are based around GNOME. It can be somewhat similar to having like a traditional menu where you have like a start button that you press on your panel, and then you see your applications. So it could kind of look something like that if you think about it, but the dedicated expose button on the dock is actually something that's quite unique and different. I don't know that I would prefer to use it this way instead of just having like the hot corner or the super shortcut. But regardless, it's the way that they're deciding to go. I don't think, again, that this is final. And of course, any decision that they make is subject to change at some point. So I wouldn't stress too much about things that I don't like, it as they seem to be very receptive to user feedback. So I think that what will happen with this fork is a new desktop environment that's actually GNOME plus what people actually want from GNOME. It's actually quite interesting. I'm pretty excited about this new release of the Cosmic desktop environment, as it's another new particular spin on GNOME, and is something that I personally like to see. But at the same time, I have some questions. Will this ever be based around more recent GNOME versions? Because if not, this is kind of a problem, because if you think about it, 3.38 is already old at this point, and if they plan on maintaining it by themselves, this is going to be quite a big it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a hard fork on GNOME, and they will have to do a lot of work to keep it up to date and to keep it compatible with like newer versions of, say, GTK or other toolkits. And every change that needs to happen in a desktop environment, like Wayland, in particular Wayland protocols, that still need to be properly implemented in GNOME. Hopefully, they will at some point catch up with GNOME and start tracking upstream more closely. At least this is what I hope will happen. And if they do base their work on top of GNOME upstream, what this will mean is that they could share they could share some code. They could solve the same problem just once and have it applied to both desktop environments, which would be kind of nice if you ask me. They would share a part of the code base, and at the end of the day, they will benefit each other, because some people that don't like GNOME could be using this desktop environment instead, this Cosmic desktop, and bring more attention, bring more usage that will, along with it, bring more bug fixes and new features and new stuff that could all come to GNOME. So again, I hope that they will start tracking more recent versions of GNOME, and that they will stay close to upstream, because this will be a great benefit to both communities. Moving on to the next news of today. This episode is quite GNOME-centric. GNOME Shell may move the panel to the bottom, and other things that are quite interesting. So GNOME 40 has now been out for a while, and people, myself included, are using it and have been using it with various level of satisfaction. Extensions, I always stress that out. Every episode, it seems, I talk about how extensions are not ready yet, which is kind of sad. Dash to Dock kind of works. I just discovered some bugs that really annoy me with the merge request or the pull request for supporting GNOME 40. I'm still using it, but I'm waiting for these bugs to be fixed. In the meantime, the GNOME team, of course, hasn't stayed still, and they've been working on some new design changes. In particular, a recent mockup has been proposed by Tobias Bernard, a longtime GNOME designer, or designer affiliated with GNOME. And in this mockup, Tobias explores quite some big changes to what GNOME could become in the future. So let's look at what's new in these mockups. So the first big thing you can see here is that apparently Tobias thinks that a bottom bar would be possibly the way to go in the future. As you see here, this is a preview, or at least a mock-up of the bottom bar. As for what it would look like, it's very similar to GNOME 40 with a panel on the bottom. Some notable changes are the clock on the left and this button on the bottom with 6 dots that would probably open the overview, and then the applications grid if pressed twice. So very similar to how GNOME 40 already works. And in the screenshot here, you can see that the system tray has maybe been merged with the notifications menu, at least in a way, because if you look at where the notification has been put here, it's aligned to the bottom right, which would suggest that the notifications would be accessible from the system tray. And these are more screenshots, basically showing the same thing. This is just like a very small change on the overview, like having this card-like thing instead of just the gray background, as I was talking about in the last episodes. I don't really like the all gray background that you have currently in GNOME 3.40. GNOME 40. And in the screenshot here, we can see something that's already very, very interesting. So as you see, as I was saying before, the notifications have been in this mockup merged with the system tray. So on the top, you have some of the traditional system tray with like the volume and brightness control. Plus, you have some nice quick settings on the top. You have some user profile picture and information about the battery, and then a settings menu, a lock button, and a power button, as well as quite some quick settings like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, do not disturb mode, night light, dark mode. Which it's interesting to see a dark mode switch, since this doesn't actually exist currently in GNOME. It does exist in Elementary OS as far as I know, and you can set the theme to Adwaita Dark, but a global dark mode switch still doesn't exist. Then you have your keyboard layout switcher, which it's nice that they moved it to this quick settings menu, because having like the icon, if you have like a laptop that has a different keyboard layout compared to what you use, like what happens often is that I am so used to the US layout, especially for programming, that I often find myself using it even with like Italian keyboards, which is quite annoying, because I tend to look for the symbols that I need in places that they don't belong. So what I typically do is I add the NUS keyboard layout and then just switch to that when I'm using the computer. Or sometimes it happens that I have a laptop that has a particular keyboard and like a built-in Italian keyboard, and then I sometimes plug my USB mechanical keyboard with an NC ENUS layout on the laptop. And what happens is that I have to switch between the keyboard layouts, but I don't really like the look of the layout switcher in the top panel. I think it looks kind of weird and hideous, to be honest. So having it hidden here in these quick settings menu is actually kind of a nice thing that I really like to see. And then screen sharing a microphone, which would indicate in red, at least as far as I understand, that the screen is being shared, that the microphone is active. And as far as other design things, there's not much to see here. The notifications are more rounded compared to how they look currently. They have some sort of shadow, and it looks like yeah, you can have stack notifications from the same application. So there are actually quite a lot of changes in this merge request, in this mockup proposal. And it's very interesting to see what Tobias's vision for the GNOME desktop looks like. I have some little usability concerns as far as the bottom bar goes. The top bar currently is a waste of space because it doesn't really do much except for having like the system tray and some extension icons and the time, and then on the top left in particular, you don't have a whole lot of things. You just have the activities button, which is also kind of redundant if you think about it, because you can press super or use the hot corner shortcut to activate the activities menu, as well as the app menu, which is being slowly faded out. So I don't know. Currently the top bar, yeah, it needs to change in some way. So the panel needs to move somewhere, or at least some more things have to be added to it. But another interesting thing about having the panel on the top is that the top is where you usually have your window control icons. So the close, maximize and minimize buttons are usually on the top of the window. So having window controls along with the few functionality that the panel offers close together does actually make sense. And plus, you can grab, like, if you have a window that's maximized or that's half tiled, you can grab the top panel and just drag it down, and then have the window, the maximized window, move, and you just grab the window that way. You have some of like kind of a big mouse target if you want. I'm not a designer, but I know these are particular things that designers and UX designers typically are concerned about. So not having like the top bar is something of a big change. Still, none of this is final. It's been stressed many times by many articles that I've read about this mockup. This is actually very much a work in progress, and they're actually trying to understand where they can move forward from this design, because it's clear that there's something wrong with the current way that GNOME works, because like little things, like for instance, that for accessing the activities overview, you have to go to the top right, top left corner of the screen, and then you have to move all the way to the bottom of the screen to use the dock or the new dash, like the horizontal dash on the bottom. So these are problems that are being worked on, and they're trying to find a good way of changing stuff and moving stuff around so that the whole desktop can be more usable. So I don't know. I'm really happy to see that they're experimenting with very big changes here, because I think it's really needed, and I like to see change in my desktop, like modernizations and improvements to the overall usability, and as well as the look and feel. Plus the quick settings is are something that I really like, and I would really like to see them implemented this way in the next release of GNOME. So let's see where that goes. I really hope that they do bring them over to wherever the next design is going to be. All right, moving on to the next news of today. Let's talk about FLoC, or FLoC. FLoC is the new global threat to privacy online. So with the quick demise of third-party cookies for user tracking, Google has been exploring new ways of tracking people on the internet. Of course, they don't control web standards, but they do control the next best thing, which is the most popular browser on the market. In the latest release of GNOME, in the latest release of Chrome, Google introduced a new tracking system called FLoC, Federated Learning of Cohorts. It works in a very similar way to third-party cookies, but instead of relying on a standard technology that can be blocked and can be worked around, it's a non-standard technology that's built right into the Chrome browser itself. allowing Google to collect huge amounts of information and traffic for every single Chrome user. And it's all opt-out. That's the most terrifying thing, but of course it is. It's opt-out, so it means that it's enabled by default for every user and for every website. And both users and website owners have to manually opt out of this process. The best way to defend against this Orwellian nightmare is to stop using Google Chrome and to not log into your Google account in your regular browser session. I can give you a couple of suggestions here. So first of all, I really suggest you to try using a different browser. I really suggest you to try and move away from Chrome and Chrome-based browsers like Chromium or Vivaldi or Opera. I know that Opera is getting more popular, but Opera is still based on Chromium, so you don't really accomplish much. Plus, the people that actually control Opera are not trustworthy for a variety of reasons that I will not talk about, because it's very political and it's very particular, and you can look it up for yourself. Plus, I'm not really the best person to tell you about what's wrong with Opera, but you can look it up online. You can read all you want about it. I personally suggest you to try browsers like Firefox or LibreWolf. I know that Mozilla is not the best company out there, but it's the only company making a web browser that, in my opinion, really cares about privacy. And if you don't like Mozilla, you can use LibreWolf. LibreWolf is basically a hardened, more free and more libre version of Firefox. It's basically the same. So if you don't want to touch anything that's controlled by Mozilla, you can just use LibreWolf. If you absolutely need a Chromium-based browser, and I know that there are some people that do need one, in particular for some web applications that just refuse to work on Firefox or other browsers, or for like testing websites if you're a website developer, you can use something like on Google Chromium or the Brave browser. I don't really particularly like to endorse using the Brave browser because I don't like the company behind it, and I don't like their mission and the way that they're implementing and they're doing what they're doing. Still, it's a better alternative in my opinion than using Google Chrome or something that's Chromium based that has Google services integrated into it. And Google Chromium is a little bit tricky to use, particularly if you need extensions, but it's probably the best Chromium based browser out there. Let's see, I use it for testing websites mostly, or for these other use cases that I just talked about. I really don't use it much. I use it like very, very rarely these days. Fortunately, most of what I do just works in Firefox. But if you do need it, and Google Chromium again is probably your best bet. I use Firefox myself, and honestly, I don't think that I will ever go back to Chrome-based browsers. Even just using the Chromium engine allows Google to force non-standards into the web without any approval from the World Wide Web Consortium, also known as W3C. In particular, them having the control of the most popular browser engine out there makes it possible for them to take any kind of decision that they want, because they know that at the end of the day, people will just use their browser, and they cannot rely on this idea. They are not allowed to force any technology that's invasive on its user, on their users. And I think that we should fight back. I've been, so let's say, fighting back for a while now. I do use Google services, which is quite unfortunate, but I'm trying to differentiate. For instance, you can find this channel on Odyssey. It's probably better if you just go to lbry.techpills.technology. Yes, it should work. Yeah. If you just go to lbry.techpills.technology, you will find my channel with the same content that I publish here on YouTube. So if you don't want to use YouTube it's totally fine. Of course, I'm still using YouTube because most of the audience that I can reach out to can be found on YouTube. I do use other Google services, but I'm trying to differentiate there as well. Particularly with email, I found that using like third-party small email providers is actually a good idea. And you can use something like Proton Mail or Tutanota and have some very private email for yourself. Of course, you can make your own decision. You can just decide for yourself as far as like these alternative services go. What I really suggest you to do is move away from the Google services, because Google used to be like a good company. At least in my eyes, they used to be like the people that actually cared about a free web, an open web. They cared about Linux, and they cared about lots of stuff that I also care about. And their motto used to be, don't be evil. And this doesn't seem to be the case anymore. They're doing the most evil thing that they could have ever done, and that's developing a very, very invasive privacy eliminating tracking technology right into the web browser. And Google Chrome, let me just remind you, it used to be about giving control back to the user. It was all about destroying sorry, I'm at a loss for words now. Destroying the monopoly that Internet Explorer had on the web, and moving the web, the whole web forward into progressive web applications and full-fledged web-based, browser-based software inside your browser that's compatible with any operating system. And now what they're doing, and every operating system and every browser, and now what they're doing is they're forcing their non-standard tech and their privacy invasive software down users' throats. And they are able to do this because we gave them this possibility, because everyone in the planet, or most of the people in the planet, are using Google Chrome. And if not Google Chrome, it's another Chromium-based browser, like Edge, for instance. And this just doesn't work. Having a monopoly in a market is a bad thing, because it eliminates competition and allows whoever is in control of the software to do basically whatever they want. So again, my suggestion is to try and move away from Google Chrome and Google products in general, but in this case, for this in particular, move away from Google Chrome and use something like that's not based on Chrome, like Firefox or even Safari or GNOME Web, if you prefer it that way. And at least this way we can somewhat fight back. This FLoC thing is really, it's really the last drop, at least for me, because it really goes to show how little Google cares about their users. They don't really have any respect for their dignity or what they actually want. They don't respect the fact that people are actually waking up and are actually considering that privacy online is a necessary thing. They don't care about any of that. All they care about is forcing as much crap as they can down their users' throats and hoping that they just don't complain and keep using the products and make as much money as possible with no concern about the people that they're hurting and the privacy that they're invading and the bad practices that they're taking. And with this, guys, I think this is going to wrap it up for today's video. This was a short one, so let's keep it like that. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, please make sure to press the thumbs up button down there, and also remember to subscribe to my channel if you want more of this. Also remember to join the TechPills community at techpills.technology/community, or using one of the QR codes on the left side of the screen. Thank you again very much for watching, guys, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.